We then have our next speaker. It is Trevor Dunkley from Property Wizards. With over 36 years in the business, Property Wizards help ordinary, hardworking people such as yourselves to generate wealth through property purchasing, investing, and developing. How to make your self-managed super fund work for you through property investment strategies. Trevor's here to assist you with that.
Excellent. Technology is now working. Fantastic. All right, so this evening, I'm going to be having a chat with you talking about Property Wizards, what we do, how we do various things. We'll be having a look at various dynamics that are driving the Perth market, and then spending some time looking at the types of strategies that you can work with for putting into properties into your self-managed super fund, and then how we can possibly help you moving things forward. So Property Wizards has been around for over 14 years. Liz and I established that about 14 years ago. We've been involved in property generally for the last 36 years and in partnership for over 38 years. We've won various buyers agents awards over the time. And what we're looking at doing is working for investors, helping them find properties that are going to work and give them very good back-end returns. So it's all about looking at the investment strategy that you're working with, what budget you've got to work with, and then looking at also the structure that you're going to be using for holding your property into. We want to find properties that work and are within that top 5% of the best that are out there. So we work for buyers, not for sellers. We do not conjunct with sellers either. And we have that potential, as you heard earlier on, that we can also help people in terms of doing subdivisions, development, or doing cosmetic renovation makeovers. In terms of going forward, the information that we give you and share with you tonight is general information, hoping that you'll pick up some ideas or strategies or things that you can possibly work with. But very importantly is when you moving forward in terms of buying property is that you go and get professional advice in terms of the accounting side, tax side, how you're setting up your structures and so on. Moving forward, looking at where the investment is going into in the big terms, we've got the oil and gas and mining industry, followed by tourism, infrastructure, and there's another one that's coming up now as well in terms of education. So looking at your oil and gas, Western Australia still attracts approximately 66% of all investment that comes into Australia in terms of what's going into mining, into oil and gas areas. We've seen the big companies move from interstate coming in, making their head office here. BHP Billiton has changed our skyline with a beautiful big building. Woodside is doing the same thing. Chevron, I believe, is going to be building something down near Elizabeth Keys. Rio Tinto is already in. So the big boys are coming into town because they see there's great opportunities to have their systems working really, really well out of Perth. In terms of tourism, tourism plays a very, very big part and is becoming even bigger over time in that last year the stats tell us that we had over 10.3 million visitors to WA, which is a phenomenal number of people, spending into our economy $9.6 billion. So tourism drives a lot of other areas and secondary businesses within Perth. We've got potentially 24 new hotels that are going to come on stream in the next 3 years. And in the pipeline, they tell us there's about 30 more that are going to be developed and built over time. When the big boys come into Perth to build their hotels and that, they've done a tremendous amount of background research work, due diligence work, and they're looking at what is happening within the tourist market and how can they turn a profit on that. So we're seeing these amazing things, amazing new buildings going up in Perth that are accommodating new job opportunities and also giving work to second-tier support systems that are around the tourism industry. It means there's going to be very good construction jobs, and then on the back end, once construction is completed, they'll be going into the maintenance phases as well. In terms of infrastructure, federal government has given us a lot of money to play with. Well, not us, given the polys a lot of money to play with. They've got a lot of money to put into infrastructure. Infrastructure is one of those things which is very important in terms of driving property prices for investors. It's also great because it creates a lot of work opportunities, job opportunities for people within our state as well. When we look at the big end of town and the work that they're putting in terms of upgrading shopping centers, the work that's going in over the next couple of years, we see there's a tremendous confidence by the developers and the builders and the people who own these big office and shopping center areas. They're not going to spend money upgrading and doing something if there isn't going to be a return on that investment. So they're looking at long-term projections and saying, well, this is actually ideal for us to get in now. The cost to be able to develop and build is very good. There's a lot of dynamics. Funds are possibly a little bit cheaper to get their hands on, and they're spending that money because they can see, yes, down the track, there's going to be a really, really good return on investment for themselves. The project Elizabeth Keys, this has been an amazing project in terms of what it's doing for our economy. They reckon since it's opened, they've had that 6.6 million visitors go through there. So think of 6.6 million visitors going into that area, the spend that they've had, the on-flow effect of that, and then added to that area, we're going to have the new hotels that are going to be built. Plus, we've got the very upmarket unit apartments that are being developed there as well that have all been sold out. And then you're going to have new offices, office blocks that are going to be built around the area as well. And all of that is driving the economy, is changing that face of Perth. So there's a very positive dynamic coming out of the infrastructure changes and the developments that are taking place for Perth. So, it's, you know, if you think back, go back, say, 15, 20 years ago, Perth was very much a sleepy hollow. Friday afternoon, do not disturb sign went up. Today, if you go through Perth on the weekend, it's vibrant, it's stunning, there's things that are happening, you've got lots of new restaurants, there's a lot of dynamic things happening that is making Perth very attractive for investors, for tourists to come into the areas. Interpretate what happens with all of this happening, the spend, the infrastructure upgrades, is it's creating great opportunities in terms of work for people living in Perth. It's when we look at migrants that are coming in, that are growing the basic economy, bringing in extra money, bringing in spending power. From our point of view as investors who are buying property that we're going to use in our self-managed super funds, and in some cases not, it's giving us a big global picture that there's a tremendous amount of underlying positive energy that is happening in Perth because of all the spend that is taking place, that is driving Perth and bringing a lot more people into Perth who want to come here and live here and make Perth our home. So from an investor point of view, buying property, we're now helping to support those people who are coming in as well. When we look at the Perth property cycle, all of us will know that Perth has basically been running along the bottom for the last 3-4 years. It's been really chugging across the bottom. And what we're starting to see now as buyers agents is that we're getting a lot more inquiry, a lot more people are coming in from the eastern states, from Sydney, from Melbourne, looking at our opportunities here and saying, well, for what they can spend back over east to what they can get for their dollar over here, there's incredibly good value. We're also seeing a lot of expats coming back into the Perth market as well, picking up those really good opportunities for holding property. When we look at what is it that they're chasing after, generally those investors are looking for better growth type opportunities that they can get in at the bottom rung and then ride the upward growth as it takes place. Perth, if we look at any 10-year time frame, we've seen that by holding property in the long term, yes, growths are going to take place. So the example we've got here is looking at what happened in 2005, where people would have bought property at, say, a median price of 300. In 2015, that price, median price, has gone up to your 545. It's come off since the slowdown in the economy. But what we've noticed from the beginning of this year, end of last year, that median price is slowly starting to chalk up. So it's potentially an indicator that the Perth market is changing. More investors are coming back into it, seeing the opportunity to go after investment properties. Now, the interesting thing is this part is where we're looking at buying property that you're going to use into your self-managed super fund. What are we looking at? If we dumb things back down and we say, right, you're taking $1 and you're spending $1, what is that dollar doing for you? A percentage of that dollar is going into your land component, and a percentage is going into the building structure or buying the rental yield that you're after. So when we look at these ratios that exist, land, the rule there is that land's going up in value, buildings that are losing value, so depreciating. We've now got 4 strategies that we can actually work with. The first being the yield or cash flow strategy. Typically in a yield cash flow strategy, you're looking at somewhere between 10 and 30% of the dollar that you're spending going into the land component. And into the building side, you've got that 70 to 90%. When we look at that, we're generally looking at unit apartment flat buildings, small ones, big ones, boutique apartments, and so on. The dynamic within this is that you've got a very good rental income that is coming in. You've got generally high, good depreciation because you're buying something that is pretty new. You'll most likely have very low maintenance issues, again, if you're buying something that's very new. The last one is your low growth. Because low growth, why? Because you're buying a very small portion of land that goes with that particular development. So the type of property that you'd be looking at generally is buying something, say, like this one in Spearwood for under $400,000. It's got a very, very good rental return, very good depreciation, virtually nothing to do in terms of maintenance because of it being brand new. But then, on the other hand, it also has low capital growth. So this type of investment within a self-managed super fund, you're buying the rental stream. That's what you're after. The opposite side of the coin is now looking at properties that are your capital growth properties. So capital growth properties are where we go after those as a buyer's agent. We're looking for properties that we're going to be spending more than 70% of the dollar goes into acquiring the land, and less than 30% is going to go into the actual building that's going to give us the rental income. So we're chasing the growth dynamic over here. So the type of property that one would be looking at would be a house block of land. Your dynamics within that, you'd be a slightly lower rental than you would have with your yield-driven properties. You'd have a lower depreciation because they're older properties. Quite a bit of that depreciation has been taken care of. You're going to potentially have higher maintenance issues. But when we go after these properties, we want to get into that top 5% of the best properties available for the strategy, where if you're going to do any form of maintenance, it's going to be more slight cosmetic things, cleaning up things, maybe new carpets, a coat of paint, that type of thing, not getting into any sort of structural advance or developments like that. But you're buying this sort of property because you're banking on the organic growth that's going to be coming in to the property. The type of property, we bought one for a client in Cardinia, a very good property in terms of the fact that it was very close to the university, very close to the new Fiona Stanley Hospital, good access back into the city, public transport, good access into the small industrial areas around there, and easy to get down to Fremantle as well. So a property that's in an area where there has been that upside of the growth patterns have been influenced because of the hospital, because of the university, have been there to help drive prices up a bit more. So that infrastructure has played a part in this particular property. We then look at strategies where we're looking to balance between your building component and your land component. So looking at that as close as possible to a 50-50 sort of mix there. The sort of property that one would be looking at would be the types of things that you'd be looking at would be sort of your villas, your townhouses in small complexes, not the ones that are in very big complexes, because you want to eliminate various of the costs associated with the bigger ones. So an excellent property here. We bought this for a client. It gives them a good rental. It's also got the upside for capital growth, very low maintenance issues because it was basically bought brand new, and a very good depreciation schedule to go with that as well. The fourth one is now an unusual one, and one's got to think very carefully about using this one because it is very dynamic, it's very different. But it comes out of the second one that we did where we were looking at your growth dynamic that was chasing there. So this is one where we look at buying properties that's going to go into the self-managed fund that's going to have the potential for developing either now or in the future where zoning changes might be coming through. This type of property, we bought one recently for a person with their self-managed super fund, is a sort of property that is growth-driven, but it also has the potential of development. Not that you can do that development within your super fund, but what you're doing is you're holding a property in an area where zoning changes have taken place, where other developers are coming in, building, doing their battle axes, doing their triple X sites, quad sites, maybe building little unit apartment blocks as well. And the property that you're holding for the next 10, 12, 15 years is becoming rarer and rarer. So by the time you come to sell out of that property, you've got something that is going to be worth that bit more, not just the organic growth. So you've added another dynamic to that opportunity. So for us, the important things are looking at the budget that you're comfortable to work with. What is the sort of budget without stretching yourselves to the ridiculous? You want to be able to have a budget you can work with, and then have a strategy that you're working with, because each one of those strategies has a slightly different back end that is going to come out of it. So it's choosing that strategy. In terms of your self-managed super fund, this is now critical and very important that you don't take information and just go and do this as a DIY operation yourself, because you're going to get into a lot of trouble. You need to make sure that the self-managed super fund is correctly established, correctly set up, and that the wording and everything like that is correct in it. I think Charles would be witness to saying they've had quite a few people who've come through where self-managed super funds haven't been created properly, and it's cost a bomb to sort out and fix that. So in terms of self-managed super fund strategy, Sondergaard, definitely go and talk to them. And in terms of the strategies to look at for going after, in terms of property that you're buying, come and have a chat with myself, where we can then look at the bigger global picture of what you're doing, what your back end is and what you're trying to achieve, and then marry the correct strategy to the budget that you're working with to get that back end. So very sort of simply, the difference between your yield strategy and your growth strategy is that you're buying a property into with your self-managed super fund. You've invariably got a mortgage on it, which could be 50, 60, 70% LVR. Your rental income on that property is going towards reducing your interest component. And then your contributions that you make are going mainly towards the killing of the actual debt, the mortgage that you've got. So with a yield strategy, for example, if you say had $200,000 and you bought an apartment for $400,000, you'd generally have a rental income of about $20,000, your contribution in about $20,000. You would be expecting for that to be paid off within 10 years. The same dynamic, instead of buying a unit apartment and buying a house that is in a growth strategy, your biggest difference is that your rental income is weaker. So the time frame that it's going to take to pay that off and have that debt-free within your self-managed super funds going to be that little bit longer. But the big difference is the yield strategy means that your net rental income that is coming in, you'll be getting that a lot quicker, whereas on the other side, you're chasing for the potential growth that you're after. So there's a difference in terms of the back end and what property can deliver for you. In the processes and the things that we do for our clients, we're looking to get into that, as I mentioned, top 5% of the best properties that are available there, which helps to eliminate a lot of negatives and little things and problems within what the budget is that you can work with and the strategy, which is then determining what areas one can actually go into to find that opportunity. We're looking for those properties that have got that little bit of wow factor, something slightly different, something that's going to be a slightly better, stronger driver. And this is where, when we look at things like the infrastructure, what is happening in terms of infrastructure, what is going to be the outcome with the new railway line that's going to be going out to the airport, how does that impact on a longer term buy and hold of a property? So there's some areas there where you would say, yes, we definitely want to get into those for what we can work with, and there's certain areas that you want to avoid like the plague. And we've got the whole lot here in Perth. So everything is driven particularly by budget and strategy in terms of moving forward. We do quite a lot of comparative analysis work where when we're going after a particular property, we're looking to see where we believe the value of that property lies, and that then sets us up in terms of the strategy that we use to negotiate to get the property at the best price. Terms and conditions also play a very important part when you're starting out and buying a property, because those terms and conditions that we put into the contract are there firstly to protect you, that if there's something that comes out in the due diligence work that we're doing that is a problem, we've got the right to cancel and walk away, and you get a full refund on any deposits that you put down. So these 4 strategies, and in your packs, these blue packs, you'll find there's a little A5 brochure that we've put in there. The middle page gives you those 4 strategies, gives you a summary of those to be able to look at. So we can do this in a self-managed super fund. Timings can be slightly different versus doing something like this outside of a self-managed super fund. The advantage of possibly, say, outside a self-managed super fund is that if you bought a property that you could do a development on, a battle act, subdivision, whatever, it's something that you can get into pretty much straight away. Whereas in the self-managed super fund, you're sitting on that to be able to pick up the rewards down the track because it's becoming a more scarcer commodity for people. So yes, if you have any questions, queries, would like to come up after the last speaker, Charles, and have a chat with us about property, looking at ideas, strategies, and things like that, or if you'd like to set up a time to come and meet with us that we can discuss various things for you, fantastic. We've also got Nick here today who will be at our table as well, and he's got a product there for you if you're interested in the self-managed super fund but going after the yield strategies. Folks, thank you.